going to tell you something about our amazing speaker tonight. Dianna Rose has been the music director for BALI for 8 years. Her first master's was in broadcast journalism, which led to her career in radio. She spent over 10 years in the journalism, 10 years on the air in Los Angeles. And 3 of those years also wrote and produced a nationally syndicated music-based radio show. She moved to Seattle in 1999, and for 12 years was both on-air and music director of the smooth jazz radio station KWJZ. Amazing. For the past 9 years, you've heard her on Warm 106 Saturday and Sunday mornings. About 6 years ago, she started to transition out of radio and began studies which culminated in May of 2020 with a master's in clinical mental health counseling and music therapy from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. As of August, she's both a board certified music therapist and a licensed mental health counselor associate in the state of Washington. In addition, she does voice work for different businesses and is mom to Nathaniel. As a child, she started training as a drummer at age 9 and played through high school, learning a wide variety of percussion instruments, including drum set, marimba, and timpani. She also studied piano, dance, voice, and theater. Tonight, she's going to share the story of drumming, the therapeutic aspects of drumming, and will facilitate a virtual drum circle for all of us to engage in and enjoy. Pretty amazing bio, pretty amazing person, and we're really lucky to have her at BALI and as a presenter. Dianna, it's all yours.
Thank you, Stu, and thank you for having this series. I think it's great for the community to get to know each other, on a deeper level. So I am going to, and if anytime you have any questions, I'm just going to kind of let you get to know me a little bit better. It's, my journey, as you can tell, was not a straight line. I don't know when it ever is a straight line, but as Stu mentioned, my love of music started at a very early age. I even remember taking some of my dad's albums, vinyl albums, and creating little musicals to the songs on some of his albums. And drums were one of the first instruments that I showed interest in, and I started in 3rd grade. Not a lot of girl drummers when I was growing up. There was one female percussion teacher in Sacramento, which is where I grew up. And being the only girl drummer in school came with some consequences. In middle school, I was bullied pretty heavily, not only because I was the only girl drummer, but I was better than all the boys, and they were not very happy about it. So they unfortunately made my life pretty miserable every day. And I don't know if you've ever been in band, but the drummers are way in the back. Everybody's got their backs to you, except for the drum teacher or the band leader. So I was ripe for, some lovely harassment in the back of the room. But what was interesting is I didn't even know that my mom was a drummer until I was a couple of years into it. And then she said, oh yeah, when I was in high school, I was the drummer in they had a drum and fife band. And so she was a drummer. So that was pretty cool. Of course, you know, in junior high, I remember when everyone else is, you know, carrying their little flute casket or you know, case or their trumpet or their clarinet. And of course, I had a drum set. So my mom had a van, we had a van. And so it would be, you know, schlepping the drum set in the van across town to wherever the school was performing. And then when the performance was over, everyone would just fold up their little music stands and take their little instruments away. And we'd be there breaking down the drum set and staying later than everybody else. In Sacramento, I was taking drum lessons from Stan Lanetta, who was like the top drummer in Sacramento. Long fuzzy hair, long goatee, totally into Spider-Man. His basement is where we did the drum lessons. And he had all of the drum heads were painted red and then black lines and eyes to be the Spider-Man eyes. So I'm sitting at the drum set and I've got all these Spider-Man eyes looking at me. And the ceiling was covered with black thread that looked like spider webs. You know, that's when you're a creative, you know, sometimes you can be a little bit eccentric. As Stu mentioned, I also studied dance for about 13 years, tap mostly, but also jazz and modern. I studied voice. Oh, in fact, you remember The Sound of Music, right? And the character, Rolf, you are 16, going on 17. Yeah, Dan Truitt's his name, and he was my voice teacher in Sacramento.
Oh, really?
Sacramento guy. And, but then in high school, my mom, because I was very shy and introverted, she felt that taking public speaking would be really, really powerful tool for me. So I did, I took public speaking. I ended up competing in speech competitions, and the instructor was also the radio teacher. And his persona was like, he didn't ask if I would be interested in radio. He said, you're going to take my radio class. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I took the radio class, and it was really kind of a merging of my love of technology at the time, as well as music. And so I got immersed in radio at the high school radio station called KRAT, K-R-A-T, and was on air during the lunch hour, and even did the morning announcements, you know, when you would go into the office and the PA system and the microphone and you would give the morning announcement. So myself and this gentleman, he and I were the morning announcements people at my high school. And then I followed the path of radio to my undergrad degree, which was University of the Pacific. Yay, go Tigers, yay, Ellen's a Tiger. And I actually started working at the radio station before classes started. So that's where I pretty much lived all the time, at the radio station in production, doing news on the air. And then I transitioned to University of Southern California, where I got my master's in television journalism. So that was, you know, shooting and editing and writing for TV news. But, oh, here's my cats. TV news just felt a little bit too like superficial. We had to crank out 90-second packages, right? You know, on to the next story. And so I got interested in children's television and spent a year in London with couple of months at the BBC doing children's television production. And that was probably one of the highlights of my life. Moved back to LA. And as Stu mentioned, I was doing different radio stations in LA for about 10 years, including working at Metro Networks, which we used to have here in Seattle. They do the traffic reports. And for a couple of months, I was actually flying in a helicopter twice a day over the freeways of LA, doing traffic reports. So if anyone ever hears me reference the freeways here in Seattle as the 405 or the 520 or the 90, that's because I lived in LA and I did traffic. And so I still call them the and then the name of the freeway. So I moved to Seattle, 99, music director at KWJZ. and was there for 12 years. And that was an amazing experience because I got to interview and meet a lot of musicians of the smooth jazz genre. So David Sanborn, Spyro Gyra, Earl Klugh, Bonnie James, Marcus Miller. So just some amazing jazz and contemporary jazz musicians. And the syndicated radio show that I wrote in LA, that was kind of a top 20 countdown show, what they called at the time urban contemporary, Black music. It was hip hop, that term hadn't arrived yet. But again, meeting some amazing singers like Boys to Men, Lionel Richie, In Vogue. So this was the 90s. So that was the, the popular music for the African-American community in the 90s. And it just said my battery's running low. So I'm going to make sure I'm plugged in. Otherwise, I'm going to disappear. So hold on a second. Hold on one second. I think my cat's unplugged the cord. Hold on.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I had a big note I taped to the wall to come at 7 o'clock. It's a good thing I put it there.
You made it. All right. So I was at the radio station here in Seattle, and in true radio fashion, I found out about half an hour before the radio station was going to completely change format, about a half hour before that was going to happen. I found out that the radio station was going to be gone, and we were going to be, instead of KWJZ, we were going to become Click and a whole different form of music. So that was 2010, and that's when it's like, okay, time to reevaluate and see what else is out there. Music therapy had been on my radar. The University of the Pacific has a music therapy program, actually the oldest program west of the Mississippi. But that was really kind of relegated to people only in the conservatory. And I was at the radio station. I was not at the conservatory. So, but psychology was always in the back of my mind. Music therapy was always in the back of my mind. And so after the radio job here in Seattle went away, the full-time job, I was lucky enough to find this program at a Lesley University in Cambridge that was expressive arts therapy. So the master's is in mental health counseling using the expressive arts. And I specialized in music. So that allowed me to get that training in music therapy as well as mental health counseling. And I was able to do that from here. Pre-COVID, I learned all about virtual classrooms. And so that has brought me up to the present day. And I have also, as Stu mentioned, I've been the music director at BALI since 2013, 8 years. It's wild. Nathaniel was 7 when I started. Now he's 15 and a half and learning how to drive, and time flies. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. It's interesting, as it seemed like I was going through all these different unrelated tracks in my life, studying the arts when I was young, dance and drama and piano and singing. And then there was my interest in technology and science and psychology, but then I got into radio. There was also another piece. My dad was a physician, traditionally trained, but very holistically oriented. Before Andrew Weil, before, mindfulness, before all this stuff. This is back in the 70s when he kind of had to do this under the radar, trained in acupuncture, biofeedback, visualization, past life regression, diet, exercise, vitamin supplements, all that. And so I was surrounded with information about energy medicine, body, spirit, mind connection. And so that was that piece. And for the longest time, I didn't know if any of these pieces would converge, if any of them would have anything to do with each other. And then eventually there was this influence of all those pieces that really has kind of brought me to this moment today. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about drumming and the power of the drum. Actually, can you, oh, you already did, Stu, man, you're on it. Okay. He hosted me. Okay, great. Here we go. So I wanted to talk about the power of the drum. In vitro, before we're even born, one of the first of our five senses to develop is the ability to hear. And what do you think is the first thing that we hear? We're hearing our mom's heartbeat, right? We're hearing our mom's heartbeat. And so our connection to rhythm comes, you know, at 16 weeks, actually, they have detected that fetuses can respond to music and sound at 16 weeks. And actually, they've studied that rhythm and pitch of sound, low pitch or high pitch, can the fetus or the baby can respond to it, and that response actually lingers up to an hour after they've heard that sound. Sometimes, I don't know if you've seen, if you've got nieces, nephews, grandkids, you see a little kid that's listening to music and they're just moving, you know, they're not taught to do that. They're not even necessarily modeling anybody. They just hear it and they move, right? It is something that is just hardwired in the human brain. And as far as using drums, drums are actually one of, aside from the human voice, the oldest instrument, dating back thousands of years. There's actually archaeologists have discovered a drum 37,000 years ago on Antarctica, where inhabitants who lived there, you know, before the Ice Age were using drum. And basically it's some sort of hollow container with some sort of material, usually animal skin, stretched over it and attached either through rope or through some sort of tacks, and then either hit with the hand or hit with the stick of some sort. And really the design of drums hasn't changed much in 37,000 years. It's pretty much the same as it's been, the basic structure. And you find drums in all cultures, in all eras of human evolution, all over the world. And drums were an integral part of everyday ritual, right? There was a time where music and dance was not just for entertainment. You know, that's kind of a new development in the last couple of hundred years, where you go listen to music, right? You go hear a performance and then you leave. But before, and actually still in some cultures today, drumming and music and dance and chant is an integral part of everyday life. And so sometimes the drums were used for that. Actually, drums historically were used for long distance communication, right? If neighboring tribes were fighting a distant enemy and the enemy was approaching, there would be certain drum patterns and drum rhythms that they knew to signal each other that they needed to get ready for an enemy approaching. So I wanted to share with you real quick, let's see, just some examples of drums, modern day and ancient drums from around the world. So Native American drumming, where they have a large drum in the middle and they all sit around. And I've actually listened to these types of drum circles, and it can go on for like 20 minutes, one song. And what amazes me is that even though for the most part, they're just hitting one repetitive beat, there's also complicated, almost like verses. And they all seem to know exactly when that's going to happen. I would need a chart to be able to follow that, but they all seem to know innately when they change up the pattern, even if they've just been doing the same rhythm for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden they break out into a different pattern. It's fascinating. The Taiko drum in Japan ancient drum in that country. You can see all this, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. China, the Tengu or the Zhengu drum. And these like big drums. I don't know if you've ever heard these types of performances, but like your whole body reverberates. You can just feel it. There is the tabla in India. And you can see how he's about to put his fist in the head. I have tablas, but they're upstairs, right? So, and that changes the pitch. Like this is one pitch, and then, and what they do is they put the fist or the palm in there to tighten up the head to change the pitch of the drum. One day I'm going to learn how to play the tablas. I bought them, and one day I'll learn how to play them. Djembe. So a lot of drums on the continent of Africa. Djembe, actually, that's what this is probably the most familiar. And again, there's the usually the animal skin and being tied around a hollow container, no different than 37,000 years ago. Dondo is a talking drum. We were talking about how sometimes drums, if you tighten and loosen the head, it changes the pitch. I don't know if you can see there's a bent stick there, which is the hammer. And then what they do is it's pliable, and the strings, you tighten them when you squeeze it or loosen them, and it changes the pitch. It's also called the talking drum because it mimics the different, the different pitches of the human voice. The bowrin, which is, if you've ever gone to some Irish music, right, there's usually a holder in the back, and they have a little stick that they use for the drums in Ireland, and that goes back. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you got one. That goes back thousands of years, ancient Celtic drumming. Latin America, which is kind of a combination of Spanish and African drums. There's the bongos and the congas. These are the bongos and the congas and the timbali, right, which is hit with the drumstick. Middle Eastern, all sorts of drums for the Middle East, the darbuka drums. I think there was one more. Did I skip one? No, I guess that was it. So anyway, giving you an idea of all the different types of drums that you find all over the world. So why do we resonate with the drums so much? Not only is it the heartbeat that we have, our first sounds that we hear in utero, but there's something that happens in the brain called entrainment. I don't know if you've ever heard of the example of if you walk into a clock store, all of the pendulums, they will start to sync up. So in other words, if you had a whole bunch of clocks, or you had a whole bunch of pendulums, and you started them at different cycles, eventually they would all sync up. That's entrainment. And there's something that happens in our brain, brainwave entrainment, that, for instance, when you're listening to a marching band, for instance, or you're listening to any sort of music that has a definitive sound, what do we tend to do? We tend to tap our feet, or we tend to move our body to the beat. Our bodies and our brain waves entrain, they sync up, and actually neuroscience can track brainwave patterns and see how they sync up with external rhythm. And when you have that brainwave entrainment going on, it actually forms a sense of harmony and community, right? If you've ever gone to Folklife Festival, Arthur Hallwood had this area where he has all these people just picking up a drum, and everybody tends to sync up with each other, right? For the most part, everybody starts to drum in a similar pattern, and that is entrainment. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful for a sense of community, for a sense of connection. Drum circles, of course, they've been going on for a very long time, but it kind of hit American culture in the 60s and 70s, where there was a lot of Middle Eastern influence, and meditation, transcendental meditation, and a lot of cultural influence. And so drum circles started to become popular in this country. And you can have a free flowing drum circle where everybody just picks up a drum and they start playing, whether it's a drum or a tambourine or a shaker or a cowbell. But if you've ever seen this or participated in one, everyone seems to kind of get in sync, right? And then there are facilitated drum circles where there's somebody who is actually running the rhythm, so to speak, of the drum circle event. Somebody in the middle who is guiding people to play louder or softer, or this section, and then you go quiet, and then that section goes louder. And so that's more of a facilitated drum circle. I want to share in the chat, where did I put it? There it is. Okay, I'm going to share in the chat. So Christine Stevens, ubdrumcircles.com. I'll make sure I get that right. Yeah. So she's a music therapist and a drummer. And she is one of the leading, she's done drum circles all over the world. She went to the Middle East in wartime and actually did drum circles with rival tribes, yet they had the same cultural rhythmic patterns and we're really trying to bring people together using the medium of the drum circle. And she's got great videos and it's just a wonderful resource to if you want to learn more about drum circles. And actually when we do our drum circles, which is going to be in just a few minutes, I'm going to use one of the rhythm tracks that she has provided in some of her training. Now, I saw some of you have drums, or you can have homemade instruments. Here's a shaker, popcorn kernels. There's a shaker. I sent out on the email, I don't know if you got it, but how you can make homemade drums. And the thing is, you can have a drum just by clapping, hitting, your legs. You can, there's all sorts of ways that you can make that sound. So whether you have a official drum, a homemade drum, or just use your body. So does everyone have something? And if not, we can pause and you can get a plastic Tupperware and a wooden spoon.
Can I use my desktop?
Sorry.
Can I use my desk?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, Christine, at the music therapy conference, which was virtual the last couple of years, I went to one of her trainings and she called it either the backpack percussion or the briefcase percussion, depending on whether you're working with kids or grownups, that you can probably come up with like, okay, here's a Sharpie and here's a Cirque du Soleil mug, right? So you can find, oh, here is a ginger root vitamin bottle, right? So anything you can use. But I did send out, if you want to go back to like the BALI of Google group email, I included a document that had some pretty cool ways to make percussive sounding instruments. So does everybody have something? Give me a thumbs up or a wave. Yeah. Right. Love that. Great. We got some drums. We got some kitchen utensils. Wait. Good. What do you got there,
That looks
Linda?
gross.
Huh?
I have my trash can from my bedroom.
Yeah.
This looks awful, doesn't it? This is a dog bone.
Oh, brilliant.
It looks kind of
Awesome. Okay. Good. So everybody has something of some sort. Okay, good. I would, and what's great about this is that it's multi-generational. I mean, you can put a Tupperware bowl and a wooden spoon in a 1-year-old's hand and you can start, making noise and they'll start making noise too. You can also do what we were talking before we got started about working with people with dementia. I work 2 days a week at a memory care facility doing music therapy. I've done drum circles there, and it's magical. It's magical to see how they interact. And what's really funny, I'm going to test this out with you guys. Everybody unmute for Meg. I know there's a little sound delay, but there is this drum pattern or rhythmic pattern that they have ingrained in our head, and I bet we all do. So I'm going to do the call and you do the response. You'll probably know what it is. I'll do the first half. Right. That is a favorite of the residents in the bum ba da dum bum bum bum. Right. Yep. Okay.
Wait.
So I'm going to mute everyone. Let's see. I should be.
We're not going to hear each other.
Not well. There will be time. So unfortunately, with Zoom, there is a sound delay.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to facilitate this where we will be able to hear each other in a call response format. It can get to be sometimes sensory overload with what's coming through Zoom. So there will be times where we're muted, and there's going to be times where we're unmuted, and when we're taking turns. Okay. All right.
So
what I want to
I'm not muted, so I can mute myself, but
You
I'm
can.
not
I have the power to mute everybody.
muted. Okay, all right.
So what I actually want to do is start with a little guided meditation. Okay, so you can put your instruments down for a moment. I'm going to mute everybody. Okay. All right. So I want you to begin with your hand on your heart, and I want you to connect with your inner drum. You can close your eyes if you want, it's up to you. Just feel the rhythm of your heartbeat. Feel the rhythm of your breath. Take some deep breaths. And then your next inhalation, hold it a little bit longer. And then a long, slow exhalation. And just for a moment, tune in to all the drummers on the world, including all the drummers of the many cultures on our planet, and going back in time, thousands and thousands of years, all the ancient drummers in human history, and everybody who is connected to the rhythm of the drum. All right. Take a deep breath. We're going to shift the energy a little bit. I am going to share. We're going to do, it's just called a jam session. I'm going to share an audio track, and I want you to take whatever percussion instruments you have and just jam with it. So you'll be able to hear the rhythm. I will mute myself so that my drum doesn't compete with the soundtrack that I'm going to share with you. Here we go. Can everybody hear that? Great. All right. Now we are going to do a call response. So I am going to do a rhythm. I'm the caller, you're the responder. So, and everyone's gonna be on mute just so it doesn't clash with each other. So it'll feel like it's just you and me doing the drumming together, okay? So I'm gonna do a rhythm pattern and you respond back, okay? First, we're gonna do it where you respond back exactly as I do it. And then at some point I will let you know we're gonna shift where I'm gonna just say something through the drum and you say something back to me in whatever rhythm that may be. But first we're gonna do a call response where you are mirroring the rhythm that I'm doing, okay? Everybody ready? Okay. You can't hear? You're having difficulty? Okay, let me try again. All right, your turn. Good. Good. Now, I'm going to do a little rhythm and you choose whatever rhythm you want to speak back to me. Okay? Here we go. Great. Good. Now, I'm going to unmute. If everyone can unmute themselves for a second, we're going to do what's called a rumble. And the fact that we are all playing at the same time, you may want to adjust the volume a little bit. Let's see. There you go. Is everyone able to unmute?
Mhm.
All right. We are going to do a rumble and follow my lead when I start to give you cues. But right now, let's just start. 1, 2, ready, go. 3, 2, 1, go. Good. Let's do it again. Excellent. All right. Now, if it's okay, I'm going to spotlight each of you
No.
one at a time and mute everybody else. Hello. I'm going to mute everybody. You give us a rhythm, Carol, and we will mirror it back. So if everybody can individually mute, that may be a little, well, I'll try to mute all. I just don't want to mute Carol. Let's see. If I mute, did I mute you? I did. So can you unmute, Carol? All right, I will mute myself. You be the leader. We will follow your sound. Here we
Should I play and then keep playing or stop? Like,
you go
I'll do
ahead and
this
play
and then
something
stop.
and pause and we
Okay,
will respond.
okay.
All right, Linda, it's now your turn.
Okay, I wasn't hearing that last thing.
I wasn't either. I
Okay.
couldn't hear it either.
You couldn't hear
Okay.
it either? Okay.
No.
Let's go back and see if we can. Can you unmute yourself, Carol?
Yeah, I'm unmute. I'm not muted. Well, let's see. Yeah,
Diana, we can hear you speaking, but
Right.
when you start tapping on the drum, it gets very, very.
oh, okay, maybe I have to just get closer, okay?
Actually, either that or you may have to be softer because sometimes it can be too loud, but give it a try.
Okay.
Try this.
Okay, so I'll do the same thing, okay.
Let's do that.
I think it may be, okay, try it again and do it a little soft. It's not translating very well. All right, well, let's experiment. Let me try it with one more individual.
Okay.
I'm gonna try it with you, Linda, and let's see if we can get this to work. Go ahead.
Okay, just tell me if you can hear my dog bones.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I
Did you hear
guess, oh, you know what? It may have to do with original sound. And does anyone see on the top left corner of their screen? It says original sound. Do you see that?
No.
No?
Says record.
Record. All right. Well, then maybe alternating the spotlight was something I was hoping was going to work, but maybe with the Zoom parameters, it's a little bit more limiting. So let's just try one more. There you are, Ellen.
Okay.
Let's try. Yeah, it's interesting. It seems to mute everybody. It's not muted up. Okay.
You hear us?
It must be an aspect of Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know, it was worth a try. I will, let's see. Go
How
back.
could we hear you then? How could we hear you?
I don't know. I don't know if it's because I'm the host. I don't know. I have on original sound. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you have to turn each of us into a host, yeah, or something.
Maybe. All right.
It could be noise canceling built into Zoom.
Hmm.
Could
Oh,
be.
that's interesting.
Could be.
But we're
But,
still
all right. Let's try one more thing. I'm going to keep everybody unmuted, but I'm going to play a rhythm and you just respond back to me. But I'm going to try with everybody unmuted and let's see how that goes. Okay. And I won't play too loud. That may be the key. Let's give it a go.
You
Good.
could hear, you could hear?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good. Good. All right. Let's do a rumble again. Everybody together. And 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Brilliant. All right. I'm going to end by doing the share once again of that drum track that I was playing before. If I can bring it back up, and we will end it with that. And if you have any sort of questions, there'll be time, I think, for some questions. So let me bring that track back up again, and I'll do a screen share and just really let your whole being, I'm going to mute everybody, let your whole being feel a sense of freedom and release by playing to the rhythm of the drum. And Yes. All right. Everybody can unmute. Unmute, unmute, unmute. All right. Okay. Well, it's not as good as in person, but it's not too bad. All right. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Oh, somebody else. I'm always a big mouth. I just wondered whether throughout this whole journey that you've taken, whether Judaism's played a role in it, or is it a surprise to you that you ended up in the position you are in Bet Aleph? Or
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting story. So, in a nutshell, I was raised with dual, like, so my dad was Jewish, my mother was not. I was exposed to the culture when we visit my dad's family in LA. They live what they call the like the Borscht Belt, Fairfax and Beverly Fairfax, if you know LA. And it wasn't really, and so for many years, I didn't really have that overt connection. When I moved to Seattle, I was actually raised in Unity, which was a kind of a metaphysical, okay. And so very mystical oriented. In fact, I was 15 when I did my first guided meditation using music. It was a Stephen Halpern cassette. I'm dating myself. A cassette called Golden Voyage. And I did a guided meditation with the youth group at Unity. When I moved to Seattle, I felt that kind of lineage piece was missing in my life, and literally went through the phone book and saw Beit Aleph Meditative Synagogue that met at Unity. And I'm like, what? I mean, to see synagogue and meditative even in the same sentence, right? Because my dad turned away from it when his father became ultra Orthodox. And he was like, But my dad, again, the one who was the holistic doctor, was into Edgar Cayce and reincarnation and mysticism. So I went to Beit Aleph, and that's when Rabbi Ted was the rabbi. And we were meeting in a Unity church, we're meditating, and I thought, it was talk about convergence, right? And so, and then just over the years, when different people were music directors, they learned I was a drummer, and so I started drumming, and then I started singing, and then eventually that just kind of organically moved into being the music director.
it seems like you just always were that.
Aren't we lucky?
Yes. I wondered if there's from a medical therapy standpoint, if there's a difference between using your right hand and your left hand. I just wondered, because I was thinking, I did everything in terms of hitting with my right hand, and I'm right-handed. Right. But I'm just wondering, doing my left hand, does it have any sort of significance, left hand versus right hand?
Right. Well, typically we play with our dominant hand.
Right.
But there is an aspect of music therapy called neurologic music therapy, which I got training in, and that is specifically for populations that have had some sort of brain disorder, either from birth, whether they're on the spectrum or have developmental disabilities or cerebral palsy, or it's acquired, through Parkinson's or traumatic brain injury, and it focuses on working on gait. If you just at some point Google like Parkinson's gait training music therapy, it is mind-blowing to see people that have had some sort of brain inhibition and are moving with an uneven gait, where they put on a strong rhythm and all of a sudden they are moving to that beat. I know I'm diverging from your question a little bit, sorry. But there is, like, if you've had a stroke and you've got the inability to kind of recognize anything in one hemisphere, sometimes there's a lot of music therapy that involves taking a stick and hitting a cymbal or a drum that crosses the midline, right? Your non-dominant hand. So yes, you can do a lot of work to strengthen the non-dominant hand, especially if you've had a stroke that has affected the dominant side of your body. So there's a lot of neurologic music therapy that does more speech, spatial awareness, gait training. It's really more specific.
So mine's more simple. Should I be trying to play with my left hand as well as my right hand?
Oh, yeah. So absolutely, because that will stimulate other parts of your brain. And what they've discovered in neuroscience over the past couple of decades, you know, before they thought that the brain cells developed and were fully kind of like all the cells you got by the time you hit in your mid-20s. Now they realize through neuroplasticity, the brain continues to grow and you can continue to create new neural pathways. So absolutely, working with your non-dominant hand, absolutely, that can do that.
So, and my second question is it would be great if we had a drum circle at Bet Olive. What do you think? What do you think?
I'd love it. Yeah, in person, yeah, it'd be great.
Yes, right. Is there anything like, do you know what the schedule is in person? I haven't kept track.
Oh, we are meeting in person for our first Shabbat service on Friday, August 6th, Seattle First Baptist.
Okay.
However, the Saturday prior, July 31st, there is going to be a bat mitzvah that everybody's welcome to attend. So that really is kind of the first service. But as far as our regular Kabbalat Shabbat service, that'll be August 6th. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then we could have a drum circle. I mean, obviously you would be the person that would,
yes.
I'm really asking you if you would have a drum circle, really.
I would love to do drum
Okay,
circle.
good,
Yes,
good.
love it.
Okay, all right.
We could do it at an Onig.
Yeah, yeah. There's all sorts of ways that we could, yeah, I would love doing that, you know. And again, people don't have to have a drum. They could bring a Tupperware and a spoon, or they could just clap. I mean, you know, so no major investment for drums necessary.
Can you talk a little bit about how you use music therapy with your patients?
Well, there's two population. So right now I work in mental health and I have individual clients, and that is mostly neurotypical individuals. And then in the dementia population, doing more music therapy. So which group are you talking about?
I guess with the dementia group.
Okay.
I'm about to finish the new Sanjay Gupta book called Keeping Sharp, which is really interesting. And I mean, it sounds like from what I just learned tonight from you is that learning an instrument is also going to help build or relearn an instrument.
Right.
Helps build more neurons.
Yep. Neural pathways. Yep. Exactly. And I mentioned this earlier. If you can find Alive Inside, that's some amazing examples of people who you think are just gone or shut down, and then they engage in music. But yes, learning a new instrument is one way to create new neural pathways. Just engaging in music and movement and movement and movement and movement. So even when if you're putting on a song that you like, or just finding, you know, thank goodness, you know, technology has its blessings and curses, but one thing is that it's making sound accessible to everybody. I mean, if you want to find, you know, a Korean drum track, you can go on YouTube and find it. And then move to it and dance to it and do all sorts of, and cross meridian, you know, midline cross meridian movements where you're reaching across. That also can do some brain development. Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, no, I did a quick scan and I think it's on Amazon Prime and it may also be on Netflix.
Okay.
Alive Inside?
Yep.
What's it called?
Alive Inside.
Yeah, it looks like it's on Amazon Prime for sure. And I'm sure Netflix.
Have a box of Kleenex with you when you want to.
Oh, really?
Pretty powerful.
Diana, you wrote and directed a nationally syndicated radio show for 10 years.
Well, no, for 3 years. 3 years, yeah.
Oh, 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, what was that like? What is writing a radio show, doing a direct? Were you directing yourself? Or you saying,
No,
okay,
I was not the
Diana?
host. Yeah. So his name was Walt Love. He was like an African-American Casey Kasem, basically. We worked off a top 25, you know, songs of the week. And we would, you know, those songs would be played. We would piece it together afterwards. But the part we did was recording. I would write what Walt would say. I would find the artists based upon where they were on the chart. It's like, okay, this person's coming up on the chart. I'll try to call that record company or the artist rep and try to get them in the studio, and we would interview them. And then after Walt would interview them for that show, knowing that songs would go up and down the chart, I would then take them into another studio and I would interview those artists myself to get what they call sound bites that we could then insert in the show as that particular song would move up and down the chart. So I did that for about 3 years.
And how does it get nationally syndicated?
Well, it was already, I mean, it was already in place. It was already an established nationally syndicated radio show long before I stepped in. But I met Walt while I was doing my master's at USC because of a paper that I was writing. And I interviewed him and we stayed in touch. And so when his writer producer left, he contacted me and said, would you step in and do it? So that's how that happened.
Okay, another question, and forgive me if you already answered it, but I'm familiar with music therapy for people with fading memories. My mother at 97, 98 was in that category. And we had a music therapist come in and she would play a guitar and songs that my mother knew. And although my mother still had a good deal of her mental facilities, she would just come alive during those songs. She remembered the words, she would move. It was very exciting. The question is, how long does that last? I mean, okay, so they come in, they get really excited and they sing the songs and the words, and then do they go back to a more comatose state?
So it depends on the individual. You know, one thing about music is one size does not fit all. Somebody may love Gregorian chant, and someone can't stand it. Someone may love classical music, someone couldn't stand it. So there's two things. One is music of what we call the sweet spot, which is in somebody's lifespan, like mid-teens to mid-20s. Whatever music was playing in that decade, you know, pretty much, because that's where a lot of the emotional part of the brain is, like, you know, the amygdala and the limbic system is just kind of exploding in growth, right? Teenagers, right? And so that's the music of your era. Not always, you know, you may latch on to a different genre. Maybe you lived overseas in another country, and so you have a resonance with that music. But to answer your question, repetition obviously helps residual effect. Not only the duration that you're doing the music, but how frequent you have the engagement. There is a residual effect. Sometimes people can carry on a conversation much better than they did, and then oftentimes it wanes. And so there's a lot of variables involved. You know, the frustrating thing about dementia is that, you know, until they find a cure, it's kind of a one-way trajectory, and you try to uplift and find those moments of connection, and music seems to have the ability to do that. But the residual effects, it just depends on the individual, where in their brain is being affected by the dementia. What helps to imprint songs is emotion and repetition. And so, like, you know, we can remember a jingle on a TV commercial, or we can remember a nursery rhyme, but we don't remember what we had for lunch. Long-term memory seems to be embedded through sometimes repetition. So you hear something over and over, and emotion, right? If you have an emotional connection, positive or negative, to a song, that's going to stick in your brain longer. And then it's easier to retrieve when that song is presented to you. Hopefully that answers your question. It's not one size fits all, but repetition can create some residual effect. Anyone else have a question? I know we ran over time, so sorry about that.
Oh, well,
You have a favorite?
Thank
Um,
thank you, thank you.
we don't have a time limit, but I want to, unless there are more questions,
I have one.
great,
Your
Ellen, go
favorite
ahead.
music store here?
What's my favorite music? What?
Store, for instruments.
Oh, wow. I haven't gone to music. So I have attended some music therapy conventions and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. That's where I bought this frame drum. There was a rhythmic festival. Every year there's a rhythmic festival at Seattle Center. That's where I bought this. Remo, you can see Remo. They have synthetic drum heads. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, we can see.
Christine Stevens, whose link I shared, she also used, this is synthetic. Because I'm vegan, I will not play on a drum that has animal skin. There's not really a music store I've gone to here in Seattle. Guitar City has some good options. There's also a place in Ravenna. Oh, I can see the building, but I can't
Oh,
think of
I
the
know,
name.
I know the one.
Okay, yeah.
I've been sent on a mission to buy drumsticks for one of the bands that we've hosted from West Africa. And I've gotten to know the drumstick section pretty well.
Good.
But I can't remember the name of the store.
And there's different types of drumsticks, some that have like almost like a spongy with a little tie on it, very soft, some that are made of felt, some that are, you see in the like the drum sets and the snare drums that have a plastic tip, a wooden tip. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. And each one has a little different sound.
Yeah, and it's a fun mission, but it can also be extremely overwhelming.
Yep. Yep. Music stores will do that for you.
A couple of comments. So when I go to watch a symphony, there's a percussionist, the guy with the drums in the back.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for him because
We're in the back.
guy stands there and does nothing for 95% of the time, usually. And then every once in a while, he'll go bong, bong, bong. And then he goes back
But
to
that 5% counts a lot.
It does. It does.
Yep. On the
And
flip side of that coin, when you're in marching band, so I was in marching band in high school and I was drummer. If ever you watch a marching band, they'll play a song and then they'll stop and they'll keep walking. But the only one who doesn't stop, the drummers. So we never stopped for the entire duration. I remember marching at a parade in San Francisco and it was so cold and that my fingers, I thought they would never come off the drumsticks. So in some respects, we just keep going. And you're right. When you're a percussionist in the back and you've got the little triangle or you've got the room timpani and yeah, but boy, that accent counts when it's right.
Yeah. And the other is that only in the last maybe 10 years, I came to hear the Taiko drums. And I was just overwhelmed because, as you said, you feel that percussion as much as you hear it.
Yeah.
It is all encompassing. And
there are two ways. Our body perceives sound in two ways: through air conduction, which is the vibration of the air waves that then vibrate the inner eardrum, and then that connects to the vestibular system and the brain, and that's how we hear. There's also bone conduction, which is the actual vibration, which is why a lot of people who have no hearing, they may go to a concert and sit on the speaker, right? Or put their hands on something to feel the rhythm. And so, yeah, that what you're talking about is a lot of the bone conduction, is feeling not the air waves, but the physical sound waves on your body.
yeah, very exciting.
Everybody, I'm going to go because it's 11:15 in Michigan. So thank you very much, Dianna.
Thank you.
That was
Yes,
great, Diana.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's great. Thank you.
Dianna, yes, thank you. It was a pleasure. I want to let all of you know that we've got a couple of other great presenters coming up in August 3rd. We're going to have Jackie Williams, an author who's going to talk about some of her writings. She got interested in, among other things, the food that the pioneers ate when they were coming across country in their covered wagons. And
Wow.
so she wrote a book about that and some other things. And then later in August,
I'll see.
we've got Kate Elias, who's going to talk about her late husband, who wrote a play while he was a prisoner in Theresienstadt. Play that ultimately was produced a couple of times afterward. So I invite you all to join us for that. And just one last thought, although we had 7 people watching live this evening, we have a large following for the recordings of these presentations. The last one, John Hoagland, there were 36 views of the recording. We've had as many as 60 views of our recordings. So we're reaching a lot of people. Thank you all for watching. Dianna, thank you so much for being our speaker tonight. And I wish you all a good evening and hope to see you on August 3rd for our next presentation.
Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.